After being arrested, Officer Dustin Hill had 3 other officers escort me into the police department and place me in an interview room, where one officer came in and told me he was Dustin Hill's supervisor and asked me where I felt I had the right to film Dustin Hill. I told him that North Dakota law, United States law, and the First Amendment of the United States Constitution gives me every right to film anybody in public. He then left. They left me there, handcuffed, for nearly an hour. He then returned and told me to stand up, remove my handcuffs, told me to grab my camera and leave. He told me that I needed to understand that I pissed Dustin Hill off. There was no police investigation going on. Dustin Hill was talking to a citizen. He arrested me unlawfully. I was detained unlawfully. I'm 17 years old. My parents were not notified, which is also illegal, and I was never even read my Miranda rights.
Supervisor warned this one could be taken as a contempt of cop arrest. That's an arrest that's done not for a legitimate law enforcement purpose, but because someone hasn't been respectful or deferential enough to the officer.
I didn't respond. I was kind of, in shock because I was expecting him to say no comment or give me a comment or just go about his business. I wasn't expecting him to place me under arrest.
Where do you want this to go?
Well, my goal in this, a lot of people are saying you should sue, but it's important to understand that my goal in this is just, accountability. I'm looking for accountability, whatever the punishment may be, but I believe that it's a clear-cut, visual evidence of a false arrest. And whatever the grounds for making a false arrest on a minor without notifying his parents and then questioning him without reading him any Miranda rights is, then I think that, that should be followed. I don't think there should be given any leniency to the officer just because I was filming him and he didn't like it. I think, the fullest extent of punishment for the laws he violated, should be taken into consideration.
Okay,
people get charged.
Robert, you intimate you don't want to sue. Do you want him to lose his job over this?
I don't, wish anybody to lose their job over anything, but what I would like to say is if his actions by legal law constitute his job loss, then, that is more than appropriate because you go through the training and you're a public official, you have a badge, you're supposed to serve, and you're supposed to know the laws. So he had, adequate knowledge of the laws, and he broke them.
We start with breaking news. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. The Wahpeton police chief is suspending a police officer for his role in an arrest that ended up on the internet. Dustin Hill arrested a 17-year-old May 6 for interfering with a police investigation. The boy taped the whole thing and posted it on YouTube. An internal investigation finds the officer did not have probable cause for the arrest. He's suspended without pay and must complete 40 hours of remedial training.
In a developing story tonight, a Wahpeton teen says justice has been served. The police officer who arrested him without probable cause has been suspended. Robert Wanek put this video on YouTube after his arrest earlier this month. Since then, the video has gotten more than 150,000 hits, even gone international and national. In a news release today, Wahpeton Police Chief Scott Thorstensen announced Officer Dustin Hill has been suspended for 5 days without pay. He will also have to undergo 40 hours of law enforcement training on Wahpeton municipal ordinances, the North Dakota Century Code, and constitutional law. Hill has been told that another incident like this will get him fired.
And I feel like it sets the precedent, along with the constitutional training they'll have to take, for them to not violate anyone else's rights, and maybe it'll prevent them from jumping to conclusions and falsely arresting people in the future.
In addition to this, the entire police force will be required to take in-service training on the rules of arrest and constitutional law to avoid any other cases like this one. In a developing story tonight, a Wahpeton teen says justice has been served.
This officer is under suspension tonight for the arrest that turned a Wahpeton teen into an internet sensation. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Almost everyone who has seen it has an opinion.
Either the Wahpeton police officer overstepped his bounds or the teenager was provoking him.
We may never settle that issue, but this much is clear. Wahpeton officer Dustin Hill did make an illegal arrest, and today the police chief announced his suspension without pay. In addition, Hill will take 40 hours of training on city ordinances, the North Dakota Century Code, and constitutional law.
What is next for Robert Wanek, the 17-year-old filmmaker who taped his own arrest? Valley News Team's Kristen Helgeson spoke with him a short time ago.
If this video of his arrest were not made available on YouTube, where over 150,000 people viewed it, 17-year-old Robert Wanek questions whether anything would have been done about his unlawful arrest.
And I think this basically supports the fact that I was truthful in my reporting on the issue.
Wanek says even with the tape rolling and visible to the whole world, people thought he might be lying about the circumstances by which he was taken into custody.
A lot of the community in Fargo-Moorhead, Breckinridge, Wahpeton questioned the credibility and the authenticity of it, and how it was possibly edited or how my story was falsified.
The tape was not edited.
Well, after a review of the case, we determined that the Officer Hill's arrest of this young man, there was not sufficient probable cause.
Chief Thorstensen says his office did everything possible to see that Wanek was quickly released. Not only is Officer Hill being disciplined, but every member of the Wahpeton Police Department will have to undergo training on the rules of arrest and constitutional law.
You know, I'd rather be redundant in educating people than inadequate.
After 30 minutes with his hands behind his back in cuffs, without being read his Miranda rights, without being allowed to make a phone call at just 17 years old, Wanek says this disciplinary action is exactly what the police force needs.
And maybe it'll prevent them from jumping to conclusions and falsely arresting people in the future.
He says he feels especially validated after having his own character called on the carpet. Kristen Helgeson, Valley News Live.
In addition to his suspension, Officer Hill will have to undergo 40 hours of legal training.
Robert Wanek made the news. He went viral. He videotaped a police officer in Wahpeton, arresting him for videotaping him. Robert, I know that you have to get back to work right now. You're at work today. What did you think of the decision by the police chief of Wahpeton to give him 5 days off without pay as a result of his taking you into custody?
Well, I thought that it was definitely, an adequate punishment made by the chief of police, and something that was handled correctly. And I also was very, very pleased with the additional training on constitutional law and arrest rules that will, maybe prevent this from happening again to anybody in the community.
Do you have any understanding as to whom on the police force is supposed to take that course?
The entire department is going. Well, Officer Hill is required to take 40 hours of constitutional law, Dakota Century Code, and arrest training, and the entire department is required to attend an in-service seminar on the rules of constitutional law.
And that's basically, you are satisfied with the decision, Robert?
Yeah, I'm pleased with this decision. I think the chief, worked to the best of his ability to defend his oath of office, and I can't really complain about anything that he did in this internal investigation.
Well, Robert, I know we have much more that we could talk about, but you're working, and they're probably calling at you right now, right?
Right.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, bye-bye. That Robert Wanek is, I don't have the problem with his activities as much as some people have. Like I said before, if he was my son, I would say, don't mess around with the police. But anyway, there he was. He approves of the chief's decision.
Isolated communities, small-knit communities that would do anything to save face and not burn bridges with those that have control and power over these communities. And when someone stands against that, that person's crazy, because there's a herd mentality, there's a mob mentality to hurt, crush, and destroy the person who's in the minority, the person who doesn't agree.